Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Digital Dialogue series. My name is Tawana Bain. I am the founder of the Derby Diversity and Business Summit. We pivoted back in mid-March with Digital Dialogue series, bringing you candid conversations across a wide variety of subjects. I have some amazing guests that are here with me today to pick up on where we left off in part one of addressing the elephant in the room, conservatives and liberals, who have one thing in common, and that is the bottom line. So the first thing I'd like to do is to have everyone introduce themselves. Tom, we'll start with you, then Stephen, Jason, Darryl, and then Bob.
Great. Hi, I'm Tom Wiedemann, President and CEO at AAA Club Alliance. We're one of the largest AAA club affiliates in North America. We operate our AAA in 13 states, and you probably know AAA from the membership, the travel, the insurance, and of course our legendary roadside assistance. Our particular AAA, again, operates in 13 states plus DC. We have about 5,000 employees and about 6.3 million AAA members. I've been at AAA for over 3 decades, so I've seen a lot of changes and mergers over time. I'm married 20 years, so I've been married to AAA for 30, been married to my wife, Mary Jo, for 20, and have a couple of teenage children that provide a lot of fun and interesting times, especially during COVID-19 and the social issues that are going on. It's been some interesting dinner conversations at my house.
Hi, I'm Stephen Hightower II. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Hightower's Petroleum Company. We are the largest African-American-owned fuel distributor in the country. We serve our customers, including General Motors, Duke Energy, Kroger, Ford, Honda, Nissan, FedEx, Waste Management, large corporate clients throughout the nation, and just focusing on the value-added services that we do add. I'm born and raised in Middletown, Ohio. I have a son, Stephen III, who 7 years old now, who keeps me busy, and just very interested in the thoughts around the table of how, as corporate leaders, we're navigating the social times that we are in.
Jason?
Can you all hear me? There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Lopez. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Nano Pharmaceuticals. Nano is establishing a revolutionary line of products and formulation devices, kind of in the groundbreaking pharmaceutical section with nanotechnology. I've spent about 10 plus years in the United States military special forces. I've led multicultural workforces in war-struck countries and aiding in development of the Afghan and Iraq economy and socioeconomic initiatives. I've developed and also led training programs for NATO armed forces in preparation for different combat missions. I've also been recognized for extensive involvement with the disabled and honored by 3 accommodation medals for heroic and life-saving bravery, life-saving acts of bravery, really. And currently what I'm really excited about is my new position with Zodiac. Zodiac is a stable coin payment processing platform built on blockchain technology. And, blockchain is something that's really is a new technology I think is really going to help a lot of companies really in the severe economic inequality that we have. So Zodiac's mission is really to support the financial inclusion by decentralizing and democratizing banks for a large number of households that are either unbanked or underbanked, and be able to help and secure their future. So altogether, I really believe, y'all, that I think we need to understand our differences, but I also believe that this is where we can foster new socioeconomic growth and really have that persistent perfection behind some of this, which will lead to ultimately health and prosperity for everyone that works for us in the nation.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darryl Hammett, CEO and General Manager for Connexus. We were recently acquired by Coupa, which was a great opportunity for us as a small minority-owned business here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to engaging and partnering throughout this conversation, learning a lot from the peers and team around us as we talk about the elephant in the room. So thank you, and looking forward to the great conversation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Deck. I'm the managing partner of a company called For Entertainment Group. We're a bar and restaurant hospitality company that I started back in 2002 in Cincinnati, Ohio. So we've been around for about 18 years. We've got 17 locations across 3 states, and we employed about 400 people prior to COVID. So looking forward to today, and looking forward to being on this panel.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So the first elephant in the room that I'd like to address is the fact that I was so looking forward to this topic last week. And for whatever reason, my mic decided that it did not want to work. I had so much to talk about and so much to say. And I was just not given that opportunity. So I want to thank all of you that have stuck with us and tuned in today, where we decided to take a deeper dive. I'd also like to share with you, for those that are tuning in via Facebook or YouTube, we do have others that are joined with us backstage. It is free, thanks to our sponsor, Think Tank Lou, for sponsoring the networking. So you can purchase a free general admission ticket and still participate in the dialogue backstage, as well as the networking that will follow. All right, so diving in. There was a lot of different things that we talked about last week. And so I'm going to do my best to not, grandstand here. There's one thing that I really do want to just kind of set the stage with. And Stephen, it was specifically around, you all are one of the largest, African-American owned petroleum fuel companies here in the country. But just because you're African-American owned doesn't negate the fact that you have a large employee base that may have opposing views. Some may lean more right, some may lean more left. But at the end of the day, you guys are navigating that ship, and you're doing it in a way where you're continuing to lead and you're still fostering an inclusive environment. And that is one of the things that not just family-owned and operated companies are dealing with, but also Fortune 500, those that are, trading on the NASDAQ. Can you talk a little bit about how you all are ensuring that people are staying focused on the task at hand?
It comes down to always coming back to our core values. Number one, faith, family, and focusing on the excellence of being a strong business. Regardless of race, we don't look at ourselves as an African-American business. How do we are we providing the best quality services and performance to our customers day in and day out? And focusing on those core values allows us to kind of leave some of those things at the company door and focus on winning, focus on getting better and providing the best services that we can. As a family-owned business, being one of our core values, we take that to heart. Families aren't perfect, as we all know. And it comes with the good and the bad, and we do have some of those tensions have arisen, and they do exist, and you can't ignore it. We've been able to bring in outside consultants to help with our culture, to help keeping an eye on it as business leaders. I think focusing on getting your talent and your culture right is our main goal. And main responsibility as business leaders, and to really pay attention to that, let your employees know that they care, and to be conscious of that. And I think a lot of what the frustration that we might see, played out on the streets and on the news and on social media is people just need an outlet, and to know that they're being heard and listened to and respected. And that's what I try to do as a business leader, in the culture that we try to instill throughout our organization.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Tom, I want to come over to you. One of the things that you had mentioned prior to us going live is the nice, healthy debates that you're having at home, right? I think there are a lot of people, which is really intriguing to me, in our country. You may end up marrying or even dating someone that may lean a little more to the other side than you might. However, you still are able to find love in the relationship and the ability to coexist. Yet, you take others that are out, whether it's in work or in just different organizations, and all of a sudden they're speaking two different languages. They can't really seem to get along. Can you share with us just a little bit about what it's like having that healthy debate and what that does for you, just as far as growth, as it understanding both sides? Oh, Tom, I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, there were some motorcyclists in the background and I muted myself so you didn't have to hear that. So now you can't hear me. Well, first of all, at home, we are together at this point, whether we like it or not. And so we have a common bond together and a love that we believe should exceed any issues that we might have together. So it forces us to listen to each other and to have those kind of healthy debates that unfortunately we don't have often enough in our society. Sometimes we're too busy speaking than listening. And I have children who are teenagers, and my daughter in particular has some very strong opinions about what's happening in the world from a social justice perspective, and she would come home and tell me exactly how she felt about my generation and some of the issues that we've caused, and I got to tell you, at first it was like, wait a minute, I'm your father, but realizing that this was important for her and she's important to me, so we had a chance to really work through those things, and when you listen, when you really sit down and listen, like I had to with my daughter and like I do always with my spouse, you gain some really interesting perspective about maybe what you bring to the table from we all come from our place, wherever that is. And we have our values and our built-in biases or whatever those things look like. And it doesn't matter where you come from, you have those. And so our ability to listen and work through those things together, while we sometimes accept that maybe we're not going to totally agree on something, we understand better and then can operate in a much more positive fashion. And I believe that those conversations and those values must translate to our communities and to our workplace if we're going to get through what we're going through today.
I couldn't agree more. I tell my white girlfriends all the time, white women, please don't underestimate your power to speak up, whether it be at home, whether it be in the workplace. They are in spaces that people of color just are not, and they can lend just a different sort of perspective. And, I was in a meeting earlier today where someone said sometimes they believe that certain leaders are tired of hearing from the same people. And so maybe it is also the fact of the newness in the way and who is bringing the message. But Jason, I want to hop over to you. I think, I don't know if it was during our prepping or just in a whole nother dialogue, right? The question came up about, is the labeling of conservative and liberal just as divisive as some people use race, right? So it was kind of one of those aha moments as the the question came up, like, you know what? Hadn't really thought about it that way. Are there people that hear the moment, they hear that someone might be liberal or that somebody might be conservative, that they automatically shut down?
Tawana, that's a really great question. I think when we add race into that, I think it separates us even more. We have Republicans and Democrats, and in a lot of different ways right now, it's one side over another. And if you're not one side or you're shooting one direction, people then start jumping and start kind of coming in with their own ideas and thoughts right off the bat. Even before hearing what your opinion is. So I really feel, and this is a topic that I always kind of bring up as, if we make it about politics and then we throw the race card in there, make it about, separating us and dividing us, that's what it's always kind of been. And I feel like, in my personal opinion, this is an old business model, right? This is an old way of thinking that divides us and separates us, whether you're on the left side, right side, or in between. And then we start throwing the race card in there, then it's dividing us as a nation. And I really believe, this is a hot topic that, I think if we were to look at these things a little more holistically and kind of remove the race card and say, as leaders, we come across a lot of diversity. I mean, look at the panel that's right here. It's a very diverse panel, but we're not allowing politics or race to separate our ultimate cause in being successful and helping mentor where we all should really be and not be so divided. I feel like it's dividing us.
I want to circle back because you said something during your introduction about utilizing creative ways to improve social economics between different people within society. Can you talk a little bit about your approach and why you feel as though this is something that can be successful?
Yeah, so another great question, Tawana. I think that's where I touch on my military background quite a bit. I've been in the Middle East quite a bit. And when we deal with socioeconomics out in rural countries and war-struck rural countries, the odds are stacked against us in a lot of ways. Then there's language barriers that have to be, overcome, different backgrounds, from how someone was raised to where, progression is really trying to go. And to really help a community, bring in lighting fixtures and economics to where schools now have lighting fixtures in the school to be able to educate, in some of these areas really came, to topic with this. But then coming home, and seeing that out there in these rural communities, it didn't matter whether you were black, green, blue, indifferent. It didn't matter whether you were in China or Chinese forces, NATO forces, Russian forces. We all had the common goal of protecting each other and really, utilizing the socioeconomics where we weren't always, with our weapons in front and all that. We always kind of stripped down and got to people's level. So what was interesting is that if we can get to that level in these rural war-struck countries, coming home to the United States, it's interesting seeing that my brothers and sisters are fighting amongst more of each other and that businesses are becoming more divided than unifying. And that this is where, I really have a hard time and want to voice out that I don't think this is the way it should be. I think we could really unitize and come together now and as leaders and as businesses to show that this can be done because we have been, in certain situations, we know how to conquer these things.
Yeah, Darryl, he says something that is really interesting to me. Recently, when interviewed for a blog, I was really talking about the importance of the CEOs coming out of their offices, really getting into the trenches and understanding their team members who serve on the front line, right? So, it's a little different when you're in combat or when you're serving your country and you decide, to approach things from a socioeconomic standpoint so that everybody feels like they're on the same level playing field. Mm-hmm. How do we get there in corporate America? Because that is a barrier. There are many that feel as though certain leaders are out of reach. And again, forget the race, right? Take the race out of it. It's just maybe the way that the person carries themselves or the way that they dress or, how do we as business people begin to remove some of those barriers so that we can better understand one another and approach it from more of a team-oriented aspect?
I completely agree. I think first, part of that starts with we can't assume. We have to stop assuming that our leaders are socially aware, emotionally aware, and economically aware of what the masses are going through. I just wrote an article about how procurement can heal a divided world and how it can help to integrate. One of the big opportunities I think we all have as leaders in our organization are to help set a model or example of how we procure our goods and services with small and minority-owned businesses. If we want to lift up the economic table and help pull people out of poverty, one of the great opportunities and weapons we have is our corporations spend trillions of dollars in procuring goods and services, whether it is who's doing your cybersecurity, who's building your website, who's doing your marketing, and et cetera, et cetera. There are 33 million small businesses in the United States, and we're spending trillions of dollars in procuring goods. Are procurement leaders and C-suite leaders being very intentional about how they procure those goods and services and helping to identify local-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, because disproportionately, they also employ more minorities and women in those small owned businesses. That can help build up and lift up that economic table, because when you see the opportunity for, as we talk about people being open and leaders being open, part of it starts with everybody wants to be able to feed their families, have a roof over their head, and clothes on their back. Anytime those opportunities are not being met or those needs are not being met, and Jason talked about in Afghanistan, and I served in the Navy for 9 years, and I completely agree. You can see engineers and doctors on the street, they're protesting because they don't have a place to live. They're sure their homes have been burned down. And it touches us all, no matter what your color is or where you are or where you live. When you're not able to feed your family, or you're not able to put a roof over your head, and you don't have money in your pocket, you are going to lash out. There's going to be a struggle. You're going to feel like the world is coming to an end and you don't have any other resources. But I think that one of the things corporate America can do, Tawana, is be more intentional about spending money with local and minority-owned businesses. Because I think if we employ more people and we're intentional about getting people off of unemployment, getting people to work, and then we'll talk about the aspects that we impact in terms of healthcare. Look at our healthcare system. More people have access to healthcare by being able to work, health insurance. We don't have many people showing up to the hospitals. We don't have as many people getting sick, and we'll have a healthier population that is able to provide for themselves, eat healthier, then be able to take care of those families. I think corporations have to be much more intentional about how we spend our money and who we spend our money with to help bring and level off the economic table so that more people have opportunity to the dream of being able to feed their families. And it's not an American dream. It's a dream that we all aspire to be able to feed our families and provide for our families and meet their needs.
And Darryl, I'm going to have to come back on this, right? I'm a small business. I was just spent the morning with many small Black-led business owners and organizations, right? And we know that to be true, that if corporate America would spend more with diverse suppliers, Black suppliers, brown, Hispanic, et cetera, that we can really help our community thrive. But the reality also is this. You have the CEO who has a procurement team for a reason. He has that procurement team because he has to lead and guide the organization. How do we begin to get more CEOs to begin to dig in to the fact of whether or not it's actually being done? And again, I'm asking this, and I want to throw this back because, especially for those that are watching, that is where I believe the exhaustion is beginning to come in. We have supplier diversity programs, departments. We've had trade shows after trade shows where you can make these connections. But something, when you have a goal that is 2% or 15% and you're still struggling to meet that goal, something about the old way of doing business is not working, right? If we're going to really think about a radical way of looking at this, intentions are nice, right? But a contract is even better.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that. I'm going to answer your question and I'm going to add to it. Tom does not know this, but I became a member of YPO, oh my gosh, probably now 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Tom reached out to me once, and I'm going to give you this example because I think it applies in this situation as well. Tom and I had only met a couple of times, and Tom said, I have an opportunity at AAA. I would like for you to refer some people to me. Tom, but you probably don't remember that, but it was years and years and years ago. So Tom knew that by reaching out to me, he was going to get a different pool of candidates, right? A different group of candidates, probably diverse candidates, some African-American, minority, whatever, or retail. At that time, I was in retail. He wanted to look at a different group of people that he could potentially screen and look at for an opportunity he had at AAA. Now, I'm going to take that behavior. Tom does not know today how much that touched me because that was powerful. So you can tell that to your daughter. But here's why I'm being intentional on sharing that, because it's the same way we procure our goods and services and being intentional. And so I believe that Tom's intent was to say, I want to open up my work network and I want to get to know other people that may not necessarily look like me or talk like me, been to the same schools as I have, but I may get something and learn and bring in more talent around me. When it comes to procurement, and I'm going to say this because Rob, who is our CEO, is a phenomenal CEO of Coupa. I sat down with him to show you how this resonates and hits home. I sat down with Rob September of 2019. I met him at a conference. I knew he was the CEO of Coupa, and I said, I really believe Connexus and Coupa could do great things together. He sat down, he allowed me to connect with him, talk to him about our business and what we did, came back and we did a demo. Fast forward nine months later, we were acquired by Coupa. Coupa is being very intentional by not only buying Connexus and acquiring us, but they've also layered in a supplier diversity strategy at an ERP or a platform as a service level, so that all of the clients, 1,700 of them that are Coupa clients today, will be able to have access to diverse suppliers more readily and source for them. One of the challenges that we have in old procurement worlds, we're using old ERP systems, we don't have the readily available access to suppliers. So we haven't updated our procurement platforms to be inclusive. And if you're really intentional about being inclusive, you're going to actually have the technology to support it. Like Tom said, I don't know how to use Facebook because I don't have Facebook. That is a great example. I don't know how to source for diverse suppliers if I don't have access to them in my supply chain procurement strategy, if I'm not being intentional about including and tagging and flagging them. And then it goes back to one other point. And if you're not being strategic to wanting to know that of my spend that I spend every year that is discretionary, let's just talk discretionary, not where it's IT hardwired and you can't put it out for RFP, but I'm talking about what of your discretionary spend, and I'll challenge each one of you on this call, what of your discretionary spend every year you are being intentional about spending with women or minority-owned businesses? That is a challenge I give to every one of you, because there are marketing dollars, there are IT dollars, there's web services, there's how intentional are you being in making sure that there are monies being intentionally spent with diverse suppliers. At Connexus, as small as we were, 65% of our spend was with diverse suppliers, because we knew if we could get more diverse suppliers to do our marketing, to do our website support, or do our IT or whatever, then that would lift them up and create more opportunities for them to hire more people, to build in more capabilities and grow their businesses. So the whole economic table is lifted up and create opportunities. But we were very intentional about that as a team. And that's what I challenge CEOs on. If they're not aware and they don't have the data readily available, it's hard to have a strategy around what you don't know, unless you're being more intentional about reaching out and asking to partner with people.
Thank you. Thank you, Darryl. Bob, I do want to come over to you. One, my hat, I tip my hat. You are in an industry that has been just absolutely shattered. I too am in the hospitality, food, restaurant. But you get to see a different demographic. You get to hear, day in and day out from just those that have a different opinion of everything that is going on. So much so, we're talking about being able to coexist at work. Talk about groups where you have conservatives or liberals. And one thing I also want to point out, especially to all those that are tuning in with us, just because a person is conservative or just because someone is liberal does not mean that they automatically are going to vote for a specific candidate. I want to just make that very, very, very clear. I think that you hear the word Republican or you hear the word Democrat, and there's this automatic assumption that you know who that person's candidate is. I really challenge, especially the Black community, that it isn't about really what side you fall on, because if we're really honest, we can be extremely conservative about a lot of things. However, it should really boil down to who that person is and really what their values are. But Bob, I do want to hear from you, especially coming from the industry, entertainment industry, hospitality industry. How are you keeping the peace when you have such a just sensitive environment right now, and people are making snap judgments just based on what our party you might identify with?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a workforce that's fairly young, across all of our locations. But it is a hospitality workforce, and by nature, they're a very caring workforce. I think, social issues are very important to them. So, at one time, kind of going back, in history, when I first started the company and I was 28 years old and I was working in these locations, I was very dialed in and side by side with all these people that I was working with, and much, a very similar age. As the company's grown over the last 20 years, and I've, my role has changed into growing the company. You get a little bit of a separation from the age of that staff, and as everybody talked about a little bit on this panel, it was important for me to try to maintain a relationship so I could understand where they were coming from all various backgrounds and all various issues that they were having. So, and it takes work to do that, because it's very easy for me to sit back at a desk and kind of, oversee things versus actually getting down into the locations at times, and really, listening to people and seeing what they think and seeing what they hear and trying to come to an understanding. There's a lot of disagreements, but there is a lot of agreements as well. So that's one of the things that I guess maybe a positive out of COVID for me is that when we had to shut down completely, as we reopened, we kind of reopened one store, and we took a group of people that were working at all different places, and we opened up that one location with that group, including myself. So it really gave us, kind of a bond, and we were all different, but we had one goal in mind. It was to get this place open. And then on top of it, we had the social unrest come through. And so, we're trying to mitigate keeping people safe, keeping people employed, and, also respecting what was going on out in the streets. And, those three things were super complex. I mean, I think we did a pretty good job with it, but there was days we decided to close out of respect for what was going on. There was also days we knew we had to be open, even though people may have disagreed with it, but we had to be open because people that's what their livelihood was based off of. So it's been a very, not to overuse the word, an interesting time for the hospitality industry. But we have some great people, and, I think in the end, it's going to make us better as a company.
When I say I tip my hat, my heart goes out. I can relate on so many levels. You want to be respectful and mindful. There were even times where I recognized on the retail side of one of our portfolio companies when we had team members that wanted to pick up signs and go march, right? And how do you say, no, I need you, to come to work when there's such just amazing work, that they're doing.
Right.
So, but to that point, we have just these different generations, number one. And so, Tom, I really admire, without knowing her, I admire your daughter for having that very candid conversation, because there's sometimes children are too afraid to really share or tell their parents how they feel about certain things. And so that information is bottled up, and it's not shared at home, but it might be shared at schools, or it might be shared somewhere else where another person has the ability to shape, what it is that they're thinking or saying. So I really admire our young people for recognizing that there are some errors of the past that we have to right. I really, really do admire that, which again leads me to, Tom and Steve, right? So you all probably assumed when you first met the unlikeliest of likeliest people to have anything in common and to create a brotherhood. But that's the magic, right, of getting from behind all the rhetoric, all the noise, and recognizing that we're human, and we're business people. And I don't, whoever wants to start first, just kind of share a little bit about what that may have been like in the beginning and how that relationship was fostered.
Yeah. So a little background. We four of us, Tom, Bob, and Darryl and I, we belong to an organization, the Young Presidents Organization, YPO, and it's an organization for business owners coming in under the age of 45 and leaving. So it's an opportunity to build relationships, and there's all types of organizations like that are meant to develop peer-to-peer relationships. And I encourage everyone to seek out and find something that fosters relationship with your peers. Tom and I happened to join YPO on the same day. We had a very, very first meeting together. I was 29 at the time, and couldn't. And you're right.
Fresh off the Obama campaign.
Fresh off the Obama campaign. I don't think I had a tie on, or even. And here's Tom. I don't have to look up too many people, but tall, very, like conservative looking.
What'd you call me?
Conservative looking.
You mean the Brooks Brothers look? Always got the Brooks Brothers look going on. Yeah.
And I just remember thinking there couldn't be any more polar opposite, combination, and really saying, is this the organization for me? Blah, 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 blah. But after, and subsequently, we were placed together in a group. And just had the opportunity again, even though our experiences may have been different, but our values correlated. He was, I got to learn, his values and how he carries himself, and I've learned a lot, over time. We had the opportunities to travel to different places and connect. And just really learn from each other. And one of the things that we do in this group is just talk about, how as business leaders are we navigating? It's sometimes, it's difficult to, if at 29, when I was running a business, I couldn't go to my buddy, who was, maybe, a bartender or, we had different experiences, and just different experiences. So to be able to connect and grow, and that it just really fostered, him and the others, fostered who I am today as a business leader, and learned so much. There's others within the organization who, like myself, had second, third, fourth, fifth generation businesses, and so. I guess the encouragement or the lesson is seek out places where you can build relationships that you wouldn't ordinarily find, and you'll find that growth and the treasure that's very unexpected and rewarding.
Yeah, and look, if it wasn't for the situation, would Stephen and I have connected that way, or would we have given the time that it took to get to know each other? And so I think Stephen's words at the very end were right. If you seek it out, you got a pretty good chance. We really didn't seek it out. We were pushed together. And then when we got to know each other, we figured out we had more in common than we didn't have in common. And today I consider Stephen a really, really good friend of mine. And that's because we got to know each other. No matter where we came from, we knew we were from different places and from different backgrounds and from different, even some different belief sets. But when we dug deep, we found a whole lot there together. And so, again, I think what Stephen left us with just then, which is go try to seek that out. Don't just let it happen to you, which is kind of what it did with us. And you might find a lot of great things.
So are you saying that you all were, when you say pushed together, was there some sort of project or initiative that took place and you all were placed on the same project team by the organizer, or?
Well, we both joined YPO, an organization, together, and then we were both placed into a forum where there were only 9 of us that met so frequently. So Stephen and I got to know each other through that setting, and quickly learned that we had a lot in common and valued each other, and that's how it developed. So not all of us have a chance to go into a 9-person setting like that and get to know each other. There are hundreds and thousands of leaders all around us and individuals, and are we going that extra mile to understand someone? And again, I believe Stephen and I's relationship is a great example of how just dig a little bit off the surface and you're going to find a lot.
Those could be found on, you can volunteer, join a board, just different things where you're just outside of your comfort zone, just a little, or outside of your normal bubble. And that's how you can, whatever business goal or personal goal, that's how you're going to be able to advance that. You've got to surround yourself with people with that you want to build similar things with, and expand that network, and don't just limit yourself to who you're comfortable around.
Tawana, can I add to that?
Sure.
To build on that, what Tom and Steve talked about, and Bob and we are all in that group together. And I'm gonna tell you what I think that we take for granted, and everyone I think has heard of the cognitive dissonance, and how we sometimes drift to people that just like us. It works both ways. I think that example of what Steve and Tom talked about is also at the C-suite level in companies. How many companies have boards that are diverse, so that there's an accountability amongst boards and shared passions around educating other board members, or C-suites that have a woman or a person of color in the C-suite? To your point around how some CEOs or presidents may be ignorant to supplier diversity, who are the people guiding them? Who are counseling them? Who are their confidants? Who are the people around them that they trust and they can go to and ask for guidance and counsel? I think what YPO does, and I know this is not a YPO commercial, but what is a commercial is the ability to network with other people in a safe environment where you can be vulnerable. And I had a YPO, I get several of them. I had a YPO that called up the other day and just said, "Hey, I want to ask you your advice around racial equity and inequality." And they said, I'm writing a letter for my company, and a large company, a $100 million company. Said, "I'd just like to get your advice because I feel safe talking to you, and I don't feel like I'm going to be judged." But I think that the more we work to be intentional about what Steve and Tom shared, create a safe environment, but also be more intentional about who we're bringing into the C-suite. All boards should be diverse. I challenge all teams. Do you have a person of color, and do you have a woman on your board? Because how can you appreciate the diversity of your company and your customers and your clients if you don't have people in your ear guiding you and counseling you about those subjects and conversations that are happening? I think every team, but I also challenge that minority-owned businesses as well. Do you have a non-minority, and do you have diversity on your boards and boards of advisors to give you advice to widen your breadth of network and scope, so you can also appreciate what other companies are going to? Because if you're a small company trying to go to big, that's a big gap. And if you don't have people on your board and counseling you what a big company is expecting from small and minority-owned businesses, how can you close the gap? And at the same time, I think that every board in a Fortune 500 company should be reflective of their client or customer base, so that they can appreciate how diversity works in bringing on suppliers, and also how to procure goods in a way that you are building systems and processes to make sure minority and small businesses are getting paid within 30 days. Because they don't have the bank accounts, to Jason's point. They don't have the capital. They don't have all the infrastructure. They need to be paid in 30 days. And when you pay them in 60 days or 90 days or 180 days, that impacts their ability, as Bob, that impacts the cash flow and your ability to keep people employed.
Well, Darryl, what you're hitting on right here, Tony, you asked a question earlier about, well, gosh, why can't they just hit their 6% or their 14% if that's an objective? Well, first of all, as leaders of organizations, Creating diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging is what we're supposed to do. It's the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, companies that are diverse and inclusive perform better. Absolutely. And so if you really want to cut through all of it, I think we have to keep educating what diversity and inclusion does to your bottom line, what it does to your performance. And it's better, plain and simple. So if you want to appeal to the people who have not been doing it, say, how would you like your company to perform 10% better next year? Or here's the way to do it.
Well, what's really interesting, Tom, that I really want to come back to on that is many of the leaders who have made it into the CEO seat didn't make it there because they lack information or they're not really, really good at what they do. There are so many conferences, so much information out there that continues to tout this again and again and again about how diverse teams are outperforming, how they're more innovative. So that's not lost at the CEO level. I think that for whatever reason, there is this desire to invest heavily in technology. Right? Because if you sit down and you look at the budgets across America's corporations as it relates to the dollars that they're putting into the programs that are designed to bring in more diverse suppliers, if this is what drives innovation, why are those budgets starved? And I could sit here for days and hours on end trying to understand the complexity and just the backwardness on why we're more willing to invest in science, invest in technology, invest in marketing. But if you sat down and you looked at the marketing or the budgets across the board, D&I and supplier diversity, they can't hold, it doesn't measure up. And so I think it's also another one. It really comes also back to the purse strings. Was sitting here this morning. We probably had almost 20 Black-led organizations. We brought some allies in the room. We held a listening session. And the common theme that I heard again and again and again, and some of these organizations have been around for almost 40, if not more years, is that they are starved financially. At the end of the day, being willing to open up that checkbook, being willing to find ways. It's amazing. Like someone said, it's amazing to me when COVID hit and America had to sit down, how we suddenly were able to find money to spend billions in the economy to keep it going. But all these years, we haven't been able to find money to spend billion in a community that has been stifled with growth. Again, I'm coming back to, because if we're going to really challenge ourselves, if we're going to have these conversations with peers, we have to have some tough conversations. Well, if we had the money when COVID hit, why haven't we had the money before to invest in these areas and really make some significant change? And if we can do another round of PPP, and if we have emergency disaster money, I don't know which organization it was, but they declared civil unrest or racism a health pandemic. Well, if it's a health pandemic, it should be getting the same sort of funding and the same sort of resources that COVID has received. And I'm getting I know we've kind of gone a little off topic because we're really talking about how you coexist. But what I'm learning too is that when you're having the conversation about politics, and this is an example, when you are having a conversation about politics, you cannot help but come back to social justice. It just always seems to find its way back. And this is what we're going to be dealing with in the boardrooms, in the ERG groups, in the outings, with the organization, or even just some of the mentoring programs. But I wanted to just circle back on that because I think it's so important that we recognize we seem to find money to solve a problem until it's black and white.
Interesting. I think I'll jump on this one a little bit, Tawana, when it comes to technology. One of the questions that I've had in our board meetings, and I'm expressing this now, is does technology separate us? Is it separating us, or is it really helping us? Now, in some cases, you have technology outpacing certain workforces and certain things like robotics in manufacturing plants, selfless drive trucking. Now there's trucking where half the trucking or the drivers, that truck across America are now being replaced by driverless technology. So is technology separating us, or is it uniting us? And I think then when we look at the financial inclusion, that is a really interesting area, because there is only so much that the fiat dollar can withstand. And that's where now you hear about cryptocurrencies, you hear about sustainable coins, you hear about some new technology that's trying to offset really what's happening, where to put an influx of capital into organizations or into business minorities and into these things. But I believe that it wasn't designed that way when this was, first present, and our leaders, have been diving into this. And to Darryl's point, it's now taken that diversity and putting that inclusion there, putting those investments there. And whether it's a little amount, a small amount, and it's the leaders together, I believe with all of us, we can make a bigger impact than if it was just myself alone trying to, do an inclusion. And so I think with technology falls right into, the ideology behind what is happening out there. So, for example, ideology and education. So I believe if we can educate the leaders, just like what we're doing and having these hard conversations, but then showing the younger generations that as business leaders, we can learn how to be able to foster this growth. How do we now start taking this meeting right from here with Tom, Darryl, Steve, Tawana, all of us and everyone watching? How do we now start coming together to show that this is possible? How do we bridge the technology gap and foster those relationships and really create a new culture and community with those values that we are all talking about right here? Because then when it comes to monetary value, it'll come. We foster, we've done it before. We've done it when we're younger, and we're about to do it again. But it's now going to take all of us as leaders and the technology to merge us together. And how can we do that from this?
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because I do want to make sure for those that are tuned in, we do have an event coming up end of August, early September, where we are convening different groups. And I will tell you, to your point, Jason, the digital divide is going to transform business in ways that many people had not even prepared for. And, I was able to participate in another discussion this past week where they talked about, what is your digitization strategy? I guarantee you many businesses had not even thought about it. And then when I think about the diverse business community, I'm really hoping that they are paying attention and they are really mobilizing to do so. But for those that are tuning in with us during the Pivot Champs conference that we're doing virtually this year, my goal is to bring, especially because of where we are heading with digital, as much information that I can, especially to groups that I feel as though may not be plugged in or may not have access to that information. So please be sure to check out pivotchamps.com. If you were someone that did pivot successfully in maintaining or exceeding your sales goals, please go online and submit an application. We have categories under $1 million, between 1 and 5 million, and 5 million plus. And then if you're a corporate partner that can donate money or resources or mentorship to these different businesses within these gross revenue categories, we want to hear from you as well. So we've got 3 minutes left with what I believe was just a breadth of a great scope of information, whether it be workplace, personal, fostering relationships, best practices for how you can ensure that you're being pushed to meet people that you would have never pushed before, how we can begin to look at this from both not just a race, but also socioeconomics, fueling the supply chain, CEOs calling on you all to really not just talk about being intentional, but really rolling up your sleeves and beginning to dig through the numbers and helping your procurement teams realize, but not just realize, exceed these goals. But for all of you that are here with us today, if you could just take, 30 seconds or less, give some final remarks, advice for all of those that are tuned in.
I'll go real quick, just to kind of touch on a couple things that were said. But I do think that, as leading companies, going back to what Darryl said, it does take where, you may have been doing the same thing all along, but, right now is a time to, take a step back, evaluate your organization, and start being more strategic on, again, those business to business relationships that you have, and evaluate those. And to touch on, Tom and Stephen, there's been many times where, you kind of grow up in a box and you hang out with the same people or what you would call the same type of people or people like yourself. But anytime I have gone outside of that, whether it's been forced or otherwise, and have met people that initially just, I might think I don't have anything in common, or I'm not even going to like this person. I have ended up having more in common and forming a great relationship that has been, superior to the other relationships that I've had. So that would be my one suggestion, is force yourself to do those things.
My comment will be ditto, Bob. Ditto.
Yeah, Bob, I would say something similar, but maybe a little bit differently. We grow when we're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And when we get into the space where we're doing things like we always have, it feels good to us, right? And who likes to be uncomfortable? But if you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, you grow, your business grows, you get better, and so do all the people around you.
And I'll just say, as a final word, just focus on your values. Really dig in to do a gut check and identify what those values are, as personally, as your business and as a community. What are your values? And let's get past the, right versus left. And if we really, what do you want? You want to build a better community. We want to build stronger families. Those are things that we all have in common. And if we lead with that, we can get past some of these things and build a better world for all of us.
That's awesome, Stephen. I think, just being a part of this has even taught me a lot, just seeing the diversity right here that we're presenting to the world. I think reinventing so much ourselves, our organizations and culture. Now is that time, to Tom's point, is that we are in the uncomfortable positions, but us as leaders have been into these positions before. So we also know how to pivot and move forward and keep moving forward, because that is our values and how we foster our relationships, and ultimately how I hope that we educate the masses from these conversations. So again, I think we help change the ideology behind this. And I'm here to help build with each and every one of you. And how can we really take it to be successful and change, the outcome of this. So thank you.
One last thing is, I think we should all go out and eat in Bob's restaurants.
Yeah.
Let's go right now. Let's go.
Before 10 o'clock.
There you
Hey, Jason, we'll get you the application to YPO.
There we go.
Great addition.
I love it. I love it. Well, all of you, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And for those that are tuning in on Facebook or that are backstage on Hopin, I would like to make sure that you all understand how networking works. You should see a button on the left side of the screen where it says networking and happening now. You will click that button. You will come to a screen where you are able to meet randomly with others that are in attendance one-on-one. When you are ready, simply click the ready blue button in the middle of the screen. And after your 3 minutes are up, should the two of you want to continue connect, if you both hit connect, you will land in one another's dashboard. Think of them as business cards, like when you're attending a trade show. I want to thank you again for tuning in with us today. As Stephen shared, let's focus on the values, getting away from going to the left, going to the right, black, white. Sometimes you'd be surprised, those that have your back, and sometimes those that you think probably won't. I want to thank you all for tuning in with us today. As I shared, we do have a virtual conference coming up where we have 20 cities across the country simultaneously generating economic or making economic impact happen, also while creating unity. If you're interested in getting involved, you can visit us at pivotchamps.com. Again, that is pivotchamps.com. If you have pivoted yourself, we want you to apply, submit your application. The application window closes on August 9th. At the end of the day, the name of the game is green. And if you're too focused on everything else, you probably shouldn't be in business. We thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you over at Networking.
Thank you, guys.